5.
I'm not one to believe in ghosts. I'll get freaked out by scary things now and then, but I feel like this was the closest thing I've had to a supernatural encounter. Through most of my years in school, I was a band kid, played saxophone and didn't really love it or hate it. This story takes place in grade 11, my last year taking part in the school band, before I decided my lunchtimes were better spent eating lunch rather than hating life for an hour every day. Back when my high school opened, it was run by the Jesuit brothers and therefore had a church built into it. Maybe 20 or so years ago, a new system was set in place for schools here, removing any authority religion had from the classroom, daily prayers and standing for the national anthem. Oh yeah, when this change took place, they converted the room for performance arts use. Theatre, choir, band practices took place there, but the actual building still contained crucifixes built into the architecture and was isolated from the rest of the school. Onto the story at hand. 20 to 30 of us were in the band room waiting for things to get started. Everyone chatting with their sections, pretty loud. Suddenly, an old microwave oven in the corner started beeping, signifying someone was either cooking something or left the timer on. None of the students had approached that corner, so we were a bit startled, but a few quick jokes shouted from the horn section and we were back to talking. At this point, the band instructor arrives, so we all settle down and get ready to play, and of course the power goes out. I'm not sure why it went out, just a power flicker or something, but we're left joking that, ooh, it's the ghost doing this to us. And for a good 5 minutes, we're left sitting in the dark. Up to this point, we're still being foolish and hoping the power will stay out so we can get the day off. However, I wouldn't be posted in this thread if something terrifying didn't happen. Oh glorious day, the power returns. After a bit of jeering that we have to stay for the rest of the day, things quieten down again when we all hear this odd sound. Thump, 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 thump. Starting quietly and growing louder, the sound of a heavy heartbeat filled the room. Thump, 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 thump. The instructor says, "Not to worry. The bass guitar is probably just picking up the guitarist's heartbeat and projecting it over the amp." So the bass guitarist moves the guitar away from himself, looking slightly sheepish. Thump, 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 thump. The noise is still coming. The bass guitarist unplugs his guitar, because that would surely stop the sound if it was coming from him. Nothing. The noise continues, getting louder and faster. Thump, 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 thump. Oh dear Lord, the bass amp is possessed. He jumps up, tries to turn down the volume, adjust the levels, do anything, but the sound persists. At this point, a percussionist runs to the wall, pulls the plug out and finally, silence. The room remained silent because everyone was petrified. No one knew what was causing the sound. After about 5 minutes, they tried plugging the amp back in, slowly increasing the volume, and it worked perfectly. Everything was back to normal. Phew! Deciding to not let the session go to waste, we rehearse our new song, fail terribly at it, but before we can get a second attempt at a full playthrough, thump, 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 thump. The beat came back, sounding like someone was beating on the inside of the amp, and suddenly the most awful sound I've ever heard from an amp came out. Just imagine extremely powerful feedback while you were also touching a patch cord to a satellite dish. Through the loud screeching noise, you could hear radio interference. Some radio host announcing some new contest. This was then followed by a screech from the trumpets as the instructor's office door slammed shut extremely hard. You could feel the vibrations from the door hitting the frame from across the room. Running over, the instructor frantically tried to open the door, but it was jammed closed, completely stuck. After all that, we all managed to leave. The band was cancelled for that day, and we were all appreciative.
4.
This first happened when I was a younger kid, maybe 10 or 11. My cousins and I were staying with our parents at our family campground, way out in the Appalachians in WV. We were always going off and exploring the woods and the nature and everything, and we knew that down the road from the camp, it's not like a tent style camping area, but we have cabins and an uncle who built a big house for everyone to stay in. There was a path that led up to a big field, so we all decided we're going to walk down one day and take the path up to the field and just go and play around. When we get to the field, we're kind of surprised to see it's maintained and the grass is mowed, or at least it's not tall. And we're playing out there and we see off in the distance that there's something out there with a black wrought iron fence around it, and it turns out to be this incredibly old cemetery. Now, what immediately registers as creepy is the fact that there is no way to get to that cemetery except by foot. It's surrounded by acres and acres of field. The gate to the fence is locked, and so we climb it and go in, and we're checking the tombstones out, and they're all from like the 1930s and back. Old. We notice a lot of them, little mementos and stuff left there, and my cousin sees this big shiny stone on one of them, and he pockets it, and eventually we end up back home. So, where it gets creepy, that night we all wake up to a loud banging at the front door. It sounds like someone is straight up trying to kick the door down, and we're all freaking out. We're in the cabin for the kids by ourselves, and all of our parents are surely asleep. I'm paralysed on one sofa begging my cousin to look out the window, when suddenly the banging stops. We all crowd together on my couch, and no one moves until the sun comes up. So my cousins and I figure maybe it's the stone he took, and we need to put it back. There's just a little problem. We can't find it. Eventually we assume he lost it somewhere or something, and I don't remember the exact details. And it's not until we make our way back out to the cemetery a few days later with some cousins that just arrived that we find the damn stone right back where he took it from, sitting on top of that tombstone. We ran for our lives.
3.
I lived in a haunted apartment for a year. The apartment was 12 feet by 8 feet. I started having these reoccurring dreams of a young woman asking me to follow her, and thought nothing of it, but never followed her in my dreams. One night, I follow her in the dream, and she crosses a stream and I stop. Nothing weird about that except for the guy across the stream loading a clip into his gun, cocking the gun, and then discharging the clip over and over. I wake up from my dream to see a shadow figure dripping wet in the doorway to my bathroom. Freak out and look away to see the same man at the foot of my bed with the gun. I throw the sheets off me, look back to the bathroom, she's gone. Look back to the foot of my bed, and he's gone. Time goes on, and the dreams are now every time I go to sleep, but only at my apartment. One night I wake up to my TV turning on and flashing through the channels with the volume continually getting louder. I try my remote, doesn't work. I try the buttons on the TV, nothing. So I unplug the TV and go to bed. I wake up in the morning, plug in my TV, and sure enough, it's in the 200s, somewhere with the volume cranked. Weird thing is, the TV shouldn't reach those numbers. and when I changed channels to get the TV back, I couldn't get back to those channels. As time goes on, I start having lights going on and off. My radio would turn on, change channels, bulbs in the apartment would explode or turn on their own at night. Towards the end it was day and night. Even started to see the dripping girl on a weekly basis around the apartment. The biggest event came from when I finally followed the girl through the whole dream. I woke up because of light flickering around in my apartment to see a hooded man at the foot of my bed. Thinking someone has broken into my apartment, I lunge at them from my bed and we start exchanging blows, trashing my apartment. We square off and he manages to reach out his hand and just touch me in my chest with 2 fingers. My whole body shuts down and I fall on my back. He then proceeds to crawl up on my body and stand on my chest. I ask, "What the fuck do you want? Leave me alone." Figure disappears and I lay on the floor till morning and head off to class. I come home and my place is trashed. I know what you're all thinking, and no, I do not do drugs and wasn't taking drugs when this happened. Other people experienced the lights, but only one other person ever saw the girl. What freaked me out was the landlord describing the couple that used to live in the apartment and one day just up and moved with half a month's rent still paid up.
2.
Years ago, I worked as a bartender in a restaurant on Limestone Avenue. It was an upscale Italian restaurant in an old, restored house. I won't say the name of the restaurant or the people who owned it, but it was an Italian man and his American wife and their daughters. They had already been in business about 20 years when I got the job. The house was a white 4-storey house if you include the basement. The first and second floors were both used as dining areas. The third floor, I don't remember what that was used for. I only had to go up on 3 occasions for something insignificant. An old back staircase went from the 3rd floor right down to the kitchen. Old dumbwaiters were installed but hadn't been used in years. They had turned a small room to the left of the entryway into a little bar waiting area. Right outside this room was the staircase that dominated the foyer. It was a grand old semicircular staircase, very pretty old gleaming banisters which curved around to the upstairs landing. I was told by the owner that the house was at one point used as a woman's dorm for UK. I'm not sure what time period that was, but pre-1950s, may have been a brothel at one point as well, even earlier. So, after I'd been working there for about 2 weeks, I was used to the routine. I would get there about 3:45 in the afternoon. They weren't open for lunch, and set up the bar, carry ice, beers, wines up from the basement and cut up my fruit for garnishes. That Friday, I'm walking from the kitchen through the entryway towards the bar when I hear from above me on the 2nd floor landing a woman's voice. An older woman's voice calling my name, like she is bending over the banister and is right above me, slightly to the right. Softly but distinctly, in fact almost urgently, by no means a whisper. I stopped in my tracks and turned right around, looking up towards the voice. Again I hear my name, but from the angle I can't see anything, so I start up the staircase. In the back of my mind I realise I don't know who the voice belongs to. Who would know my name? It wasn't the owner's wife, who was an older woman and worked there. It wasn't any of the 3 waitresses that also worked there. I had just come from the parking lot. The only cars in the lot were the owner's, the chef and mine. The waitresses hadn't gotten to work yet, but my name had been called twice. So I started up the staircase answering, "Yes? Who's there? Hello? Who's up there?" I got up about halfway up the stairs before something made me stop. No one was there. Even though I had heard the lady's voice from a certain spot on the landing where she would still have to be, I suddenly got a really strange sensation of cold where I was standing. My arms got goose flesh and I started to shiver. It wasn't a breeze, it was just a cold spot. No AC vent anywhere or anything. I'm still standing there, by now a little pissed. "Hey, that's not funny. Who's there?" When the owner's wife appears at the door of the bar right below the foot of the stairs, she looks at me and then, before I can even tell her what had happened, she looks past me towards the top of the staircase, looks back at me, sighs loudly and asks me what I saw. Strange question. I go back down the stairs and follow her into the bar, telling her as we are walking about the old lady's voice I just heard calling my name twice. She has me sit down and explains that she didn't want to have to tell me this because it seems to spook the employees. They have trouble keeping workers because such strange things are always happening. She never mentions the word haunted. She then tells me that before the house was used as a dorm, it was lived in by two elderly women, sisters. One of the sisters had died and the remaining one sold the house to the university. I'm sitting there thinking, so what the hell does that have to do with this? When she says the one sister died on the staircase. She tripped or had a heart attack going up the stairs. I don't remember which, when the other sister was out and had died there alone near the top of the stairs. The boss's wife asked me if I thought I was brave, level-headed enough to keep working there without getting all unnerved about it. They could use someone else unafraid working there because most of the waitresses refused to go upstairs. They were having to turn down reservations and let the upstairs tables go unused. Apparently only one waitress was willing to work upstairs. Neither the owner nor his wife and daughters would go up there alone. Only that one waitress. Evidently, upstairs was where the real action was. Tables would be set up, the waitress would go downstairs to get something, come back, the tabletop would be rearranged, things on the mantles would rearrange themselves, sliding back and forth across without falling off left and right, and footsteps creaking the floorboards, but nothing sinister at all, usually. I was and am still pretty fearless. I would have ordinarily been really excited. Hey, cool, I was in a haunted house. But that voice saying my name so desperately, it was creepy. A few months after that, the owner had a mild heart attack and fell down the basement staircase. Afterwards, when he came back to work, he was a nervous wreck, touchy. He got mad at me for something trivial and fired me. They were having financial troubles because of the hospital bills, I think, who knows. His wife took over the bartending duties. They never hired another bartender. Then he had another heart attack, a more serious one, shut down the restaurant for a good few months later. I haven't been to Lexington, down around the campus at least, for many years. I don't even know if the house is still there, but I know what I heard and felt. And I can still remember that creepy old voice which seemed to be leaning down towards the back of my neck, calling my name.
1.
This story is one of my family's. It was a cloudy day and I was at school. I was in the 3rd grade. Me and some friends of mine were playing tag and just chasing each other. And I got tagged, so I was chasing one of my friends and I hit my head on a trailer from a big rig. Didn't know that I had busted my head open and was bleeding. Well, they took me to the office and they called my mum. Well, my mum was doing some laundry and she had the radio on. My little brother was there with her. Well, my little brother said,
"Jim, stop playing around."
And my mother told him I was at school. And he said,
"No, I just saw him stick his head out of the upstairs door."
And my mum went to see, when all of a sudden the phone started to ring, and at that same moment the radio turned itself down. It was the school calling her to come and get me, because I had busted my head. How did my little brother see me when I wasn't there, and how did the radio turn itself down just at that moment?